This is the storyline of the movie The Northman, released in the year 2022. Spoilers ahead. Please like and subscribe to this tiny channel. In the year 895 AD, we see a king, and he wins a war, as the movie starts. When he returns to his kingdom, the people rejoice. The people greeted him with open arms. After winning the war, the king brought numerous treasures and slaves with him. The king's family is also seen here. He has a son and a wife, the queen. His son's name was Amleth. They were also overjoyed to see the king's return after a long time. The king gives his son a gold chain from the seized treasure. There was a victory celebration going on. Meanwhile, Fjolnir, the king's younger brother, arrives. He was ruthless and self-centered, but he'd fought beside the king in battles. The king has won this war because of him. Later on, the queen, pleased with Fjolnir, gives him a drink. When the king and queen were in their room at night, the king shows the queen his war-related injuries. He tells the queen that he wants to make Amleth the new king. After hearing this, she replies, "No, don't crown him king yet, he's too young. In addition, he is immature. You should also kill your brother before crowning Amleth king. Because he was with you during the war. He can be rebellious if you don't make him king." Later on, we see Amleth, who is immature and weak. His father takes him to a temple located outside the kingdom. His father explains, "Once upon a time, my father brought me here. And today, I've brought you here." Later, they act like foxes when they go in there. A priest comes over there and offers them something to drink. He also asks them to verify whether they are a wolf or a dog. The king roars angrily after hearing this. Amleth roars afterwards, but his voice isn't quite as loud. Hearing this, king said to his son, "I believe you are a weak fox. Something must be done to make you powerful." Later, they undertake a series of rituals to crown Amleth as king. They leave the temple after the rituals are completed. Fjolnir, the king's brother, arrives there with his soldiers. He starts shooting arrows here, and one of them hits the king. That is why he instructs his son to depart the area. In the same way, Amleth flees from there. Following Amleth's departure, the king's brother comes and beheads and kills the king. Later, Fjolnir's men pursue Amleth. When a soldier later arrests Amleth, Amleth slices his nose and severely injures him. He flees after completing this task. When he arrives in his kingdom, he discovers that his uncle Fjolnir has occupied it. Amleth's mother was taken by Fjolnir's men. And the soldier whose nose Amleth has slashed tells him that Amleth died in the sea by drowning. However, Amleth was still alive, thus it was a lie. Then Amleth takes a boat and flees from his kingdom. After a tough journey from there, he swears to save his mother and seek revenge by murdering Fjolnir. After many years, we see the scene of Russia. There Amleth has grown to be fairly a powerful warrior. After that, they went after the small villages. They used to kidnap them and hold them captive, before brutally burning their house and children down alive. Amleth, on the other hand, doesn't like his warriors' company and conduct. The same night when he was roaming in his village, he sees a strange woman who has worn a strange thing on her head. She claimed that your half-brother, the son of Fjolnir, had taken her eyes. But she could still see him. The woman tells him everything about his life, from his history to his future. And then she vanishes. Meanwhile, we can see when Amleth's army were selling slaves. Amleth learns that a handful of his warriors are about to be sold to his uncle Fjolnir. As a result, he sits in that boat with those slaves, who were to be sold to Fjolnir, his uncle. Meanwhile, a storm approaches, and Olga, a slave girl, is about to fall. Amleth saves her life at the 11th hour. They have a good friendship because Amleth saved Olga's life. When they wake up the next morning, they are at their destination, an island. Fjolnir had migrated to this location after killing his king brother. Here, Fjolnir's troops lead the slaves ahead of them. Olga says to Amleth, "I know you've come here on purpose. You've come here for a specific reason." He explains that he has come to murder Fjolnir. "He's my uncle, and during a rebellion, he killed my father, the king." Fjolnir is inspecting the slaves. When he notices Amleth, he is happy to see him since he had needed to acquire strong slaves like Amleth. When Fjolnir inquires about his name, he responds with a different name. Olga, Amleth, and another slave were chosen for cooking and washing clothes. Fjolnir's warriors were ruthless, enslaving slaves to do their laborious job. Amleth runs into his mother one day. Olga came to meet Amleth after work, when he was eating his dinner. But the soldiers wouldn't let her meet him and they take her somewhere. Amleth sees an animal who after indicating calls him. Amleth begins to chase that animal and while chasing, it reaches a cave. Amleth sees a priest in the cave, who was performing a ritual there. He tells him, that he knows, who he is, and that he is the son of the king. He shows him the old priest's skull. It was the same skull of priest who tested Amleth. After cutting his tongue and beheading him, Fjolnir kills him. The current priest was so powerful that he could communicate with the skull. He understands magic and has the ability to bring the skull to life. Amleth approaches the priest for help and advice on how to take revenge on Fjolnir. He learns about a sword from the priest. He travels in pursuit of the sword after hearing about it. The sword was in a derelict building, and the skull had told him about this. There was a mummy of a king with that sword there. When Amleth reached out to take the mummy's sword, it sprang to life and attacked him, and they began a long fight. When Amleth takes the mummy into light, he notices that all these are not real. But it was his vision because the real mummy and sword were not moving. He easily snatches it, and the mummy got destroyed once he took the sword. Fjolnir, on the other hand, tries to misbehave with Olga. When Olga intervenes, he orders his soldiers to severely punish her. Because she deserves the same. Here we see Amleth concealing the sword and went to meet Olga. He informs her that Fjolnir will be killed soon. And I'll take you out forever after releasing you from here. Later, some people appear and ask Olga to accompany them. The troops of Fjolnir take Amleth for a dangerous game in the next scene. It is dangerous in the sense that it has the potential to kill Amleth. Fjolnir's army was losing in this game. Fjolnir's kid, on the other hand, goes with the intention of winning. He fell because he was young and immature, and he got injured. When a soldier from another army was about to strike him in the head with a ball, Amleth arrives there and saves the life of his cousin. He defeats the warriors of the other team and wins the game. They were rejoicing because of their victory. Because of Amleth, this game was won. So a Fjolnir soldier appears and grants him permission to spend the night with Olga. Because they are aware that they are attracted to each other. Olga and Amleth later spend a lot of time together. Later, we discover that someone has killed 7 Fjolnir troops and they were hung outside the temple. Fjolnir's soldiers thinks it's all done by slaves. But a white-haired priest appears and says it's not the slaves who are doing it, but a soul that is dangerous. Everyone will be killed one by that soul. And we'll have to make sacrifices to save ourselves from that soul. They were preparing to perform a ritual to sacrifice a slave. We later notice some dogs start barking towards Amleth. And when Fjolnir's dog starts attacking him, he kills them. On the other hand, the slave who was supposed to be sacrificed was not present. But a special Fjolnir's man was hanged there to death. It indicates that he had been offered as a sacrifice. Fjolnir later gives the weapons to his slaves and asks them to protect him. Many of Amleth's slaves later end up dead. Here, Amleth grasps the opportunity to meet his mother. He tells that it is Amleth, your son, and I'll seek revenge of my father's death on Fjolnir tomorrow. She says that your father didn't care about me, I was like a slave for him. He was greedy and he loved only money and treasures. But your uncle isn't like this. He didn't love money or gold, but he loves me. I've taken control on your uncle and have killed your father because he was greedy. The wars he'd won was because of Fjolnir, not him. Amleth becomes furious and tell her that I'll kill you too with Fjolnir and his soldiers. No, she adds, since I'm your mother and you adore me. And she wants him to pay attention to her. She says, when you will kill Fjolnir, I'll be your queen, and we'll rule the kingdom together. He flees from there seeing his mother in this state. While on his way, he kills his cousin, Fjolnir's son, and removes his heart. Later, he approaches Olga and requests her to flee. But she replies no, we won't leave until you finish your goal, which is to kill Fjolnir. When Fjolnir learns of his son's death, he suspects Amleth and begins killing his companion. Amleth appears when he keeps a dagger around Olga's neck. He asks him to stop because if he does, he would give him the heart of his son. Then, Fjolnir's men assault him, but he is exceedingly powerful. After attacking to keep them away, he started murdering them one by one. Olga takes advantage of the situation and flees from there. After a long war, finally, Fjolnir's warriors catch Amleth and take him to Fjolnir. Fjolnir questions how I know taught this is my son's heart, and not anyone else. Then Amleth answers, because I killed him. After hearing this, Fjolnir imprisons him. He is cruelly beaten and tortured. All of Fjolnir's men attend Fjolnir's son's funeral. Meanwhile, Amleth's father's soul arrives as a flock of crows and frees him up. When Fjolnir arrives to murder Amleth, he discovers he has vanished. Amleth and Olga are seen together. Olga took Amleth very far from Fjolnir's reach and they were married there. They've resolved to stop fighting and live quietly in a relative's home. They board a ship to travel there. There Amleth senses that they're going to have a baby. So, he swears to kill Fjolnir again because if he doesn't, he'll come for my baby one day, and this is something I don't want. Later, after giving the boat owner a ring, he informs him, it is your job to safely transport them to the relative's home. Despite Olga's best efforts, he departed with them and continued on his way. He claims that our son, not me, will be the next king. He jumps into the water to enter Fjolnir's kingdom. When he arrives there, he notices a large number of people dying on their own, because Amleth has taken the sword from them. The mummy king wasn't just any mummy, he held unique abilities and was assisting Amleth. As a result several Fjolnir warriors were killed. Then he kills the soldier there who tried to kidnap him when he was a kid. All of the soldiers were killed, and the slaves were freed. Then Amleth enters Fjolnir's residence to kill Fjolnir. There he was attacked by his mother from behind. But accidentally, she was killed by her own sword. Fjolnir later appears in front of Amleth and informs him, that I'll see you in hell. Now, we see that Amleth arrived at the battleground. Fjolnir attacks Amleth after moving forward. Both were powerful and dominating each other in a long struggle. The war was of equal status. Later, we see Fjolnir stabbing Amleth in the chest with his sword. And Amleth beheads Fjolnir and both died. The movie ends here. Thank you for watching. If you like this video then please like, share and subscribe to this tiny channel.